In this tutorial, you will learn how to use dynamic shortcodes to persistently query a list of child terms when we're either in the parent category or in one of the sibling child terms. Now let's take a look. So here we have a locations taxonomy, which is within the services CBT, and that locations taxonomy contains the parent terms as the countries within the United Kingdom, so that we have England, we have the Northern Ireland, we have Scotland and Wales. Then as child terms, we have the cities within those countries. Now on the front end, this is what we have. So we have the archive page. So within the England term, we have the list of child terms. So that is Birmingham, we have Bristol, we have Liverpool, London, and Manchester. If I go into any of them, like let's say Liverpool, the list still remains there, and we're in the Liverpool term archive page. So if we go into any other ones, so like Northern Ireland, you see we have the cities within Northern Ireland. You go to Wales, we have the cities there. If I go into Cardiff, you see it still shows the child terms, and we are in one of the child terms. So how can we create this persistent list using dynamic shortcodes? The final code will be in the description, so you can just go ahead and check it out and modify it to your liking. There will be two versions of the code. The first one is what I'll be showing you in this video. The second one will not work currently, but if you have a version of dynamic shortcodes that is higher than 1.5.9, then it should work for you, because there's going to be a simplified syntax that only works with the newer versions of dynamic shortcodes. So now let's take a look at how I will build the shortcode. I'll leave a list of links that you may want to check out to learn more about the shortcodes we'll be using in this video. The first one is how to use the for to cycle an array with dynamic shortcodes. The second one is the query dynamic shortcode. And the third one is the term dynamic shortcodes. These three combined will give you good knowledge about the shortcodes we'll be using in this video. So now let's go ahead and start building out our shortcode. Because we are building out a term query, that can only be done within a PowerShell code. So now let's go ahead and build out our PowerShell code. To create a PowerShell code, you have to head over to Dynamic Shortcodes, PowerShell Codes. Then we create a new PowerShell code. First, to give it a name. The name is the same way we create slugs. So it cannot have special characters and it cannot have spaces. So we can call it maybe child-locations. Then we'll be using the for loop. So if you go to the documentation, it explains it. This is how the for loop starts. It takes 3 arguments. The first argument is the name, which is given as a placeholder for the current value in the loop. Then we can now retrieve it using the get shortcode. The next one is the array, which is the iterable value to loop over. Finally, we have what is going to be printed out, which is the template. That template can either be created manually by writing the HTML, or you can call in a shortcode for a template. So maybe from your Elementor template, your Bricks template, or any other template. So now let's go ahead and do it. So we'll start with the UL structure, go back, and then I'll say UL. Let me expand this a bit. And enter space. We'll create the for loop. So curly brace for colon space. I'm just going to be adding them in new lines so that it's easy for us to see. So new line, what is the placeholder? Let me give it a meaningful name like term-id. Then the iterable value, which is the array. In this case, we're going to now use the query. So open and close the curly brace, and I'll say query colon terms space. You can see more about the query in the query documentation. We can give you all the syntax. So basically, query colon the type, and these are the types. You have posts, users, terms, and so on. And if you want to learn what kind of parameters we can use within those types, then you can now go through all of this documentation. So this is for term. You can go to the term documentation. And these are all of the parameters that we can add as arguments to our query terms. The main one we're going to be using now is the taxonomy, because when we're querying the term, we need to know from what taxonomy. Then the next one we'll be using is the parent, because we need to define what the parent term is so that it can only display the child terms from that parent. So now let's go ahead and continue. So I'll say query terms at taxonomy equal to, so we need to get the taxonomy name. You can either come directly to your taxonomy. So under services, my locations, if you check the URL on the bottom of the page, you'll be able to see the slug of your taxonomy. Or I can come to my meta box taxonomies. Then I'll go ahead and check. This is the taxonomy. Open it. You see the slug. That's what we need. So location, copy it. Then I'll come back to my shortcode, and then I'll paste that taxonomy slug there. The next thing we need to do is to now choose what the parent is. And I'll also add an extra one, which is the hide underscore empty equal to 0. So basically what I'm saying here is, because some of my terms don't actually have posts, but I want to display all of the terms. In your case, you may not want that, but in this example, because not all of the terms have posts attached to them because they're all demo. So that I'm saying, do I want to hide the empty terms? No. Then the final one is the parent. So I'll say parent equal to. Now this is where it requires a bit of thinking. So what we want to do is, we are saying that when we are on a parent term, the parent term will not have any parent attached to it. So for those parent terms, we want to just use their own current ID as the term ID, so that all it will happen is that it will only now show the child terms on the parent archive page. But when we are on a child archive page, we can now retrieve successfully the parent term. So now will now be the term ID here. So we'll use an if condition. So I'll open and close the curly brace. I'll say if colon. Then this is where it changes. So I'll first show you the new syntax. Then that doesn't actually work. So we'll now have to generate our own syntax ourselves. So the new syntax is supposed to be if the parent term exists. So I'll say term colon parent exists. Then return the parent term. So that's term colon parent. Otherwise, return the ID of the current term. That is term colon ID. So if we're on any of the child term archive pages, that child term will have a parent term. So it will now put that as the term ID here. So within our template, it will only retrieve the child terms. But if we're on a parent, the parent does not have its own parent term. So for that one, just use the current archive title. So like we're on the England term archive page, then it will use its own ID as the parent within this whole shortcode. Okay. So that's it. Then we continue. The next thing we need to do is put the templates that I want to return. So that I'll put them in square braces, and I'll close my for loop. Okay. So now within this one, we want to use our LIs. So LI, and I'll close the LI. Then after all of these shortcodes, I want to close my UL. So /UL. Okay. So now within the templates, what we want to do is we want to create a link to the different child terms. So I'll use an A tag. So A href equal to the term permalink. So term colon permalink. But for which term? That's when we now have to start specifying the ID of the term, which is gotten from the placeholder. So at ID, you don't have to put capital letter, equal to get term dash ID. So basically get the placeholder and replace it with what we have here currently, So that's the first one. Then I'll close the A tag. Then I want to put the name of the term. So this is a link, but we need to get the name. So I'll do the same thing again. Term, colon, name at ID equal to get, colon, term dash ID. Okay. Then I'll close the A tag and that's it. But like I said, this term parent doesn't work yet as of version 1.5.9. So we need to now create our own shortcode that will work in place of this term parent. So for that, we need to use one of the native WordPress functions, which is called the getQueried object. So I'll start my shortcode. So I'm generally supposed to use the call. So I'll say call, colon, get underscore queried underscore object. From that get queried object, we need to now get the value for the parent ID. So I'll now use the pipe dot symbol. Whenever we're working with post objects, we need to use the pipe dot to be able to enter into that object and then retrieve the value we want. So the value we want to retrieve here is the parent. So we want to now replace this term parent with our call. To do that easily, I can now set this into a variable so that I don't have to be writing this long query every time in two places. So all I'll do is I'll use the set shortcode. So set, let me just say maybe parent. So I want to set a variable called parent to be this long shortcode. And let me close the set. So rather than this term now, I'll now use the get shortcode. So get this parent. Same thing here. Get the parent. And that should work. Let's see. Let me indent it to make sure everything is there. Okay. So we have our for. This is the placeholder. This is the iterable value. And this is the template. So yeah, I believe that should work. So let's save it. Okay, it's saved now. And I'll just go ahead and copy the PowerShot code. Copy. Then ideally, we want to go to our template. So I'll go to my template, which is a breaks template in this case. Then I would want to go into my archive template. So I've called it child categories archive. Edit it. And within here, we just need to use a widget that returns the dynamic data. So we can use any one. In this case, let me just use the code widget. Okay, code. And let's just drop it at the bottom. Then I'll paste my shortcode. I need to make sure that I'm passing dynamic data, suppressing errors. Let me say I want to render without wrapper. And then sign the code. And you see, it's returning our values for us. Let's go ahead and preview it on the front end. Before we do that, let me delete the old one I have so that the queries don't interfere with each other. Let me save it. And I'll preview it on the front end. And you see, we have those three within Edinburgh. Let me go to England. And we have the ones in England. Only the ones in England are here. If I go into any of them in London, you see, they still appear. But if I go to any other parent term, like Northern Ireland, if I go down, you see, only the cities within Northern Ireland show up here. So yeah, that's basically how we can persistently display the list of child terms within either the parent term or sibling terms. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm working on a course that will explain all of the dynamic shortcodes from start to finish. If you'd be interested in that, please let me know in the comments and let me know what will you want to see within the course. Don't worry, the course will be free, so you don't have to pay for it, but just let me know what you want to see within that course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.